What happens when one of Hollywood's most unpredictable actors meets a talk show host who thinks he can control the narrative? You get an explosive confrontation that nobody saw coming. The tension was so thick you could cut it with a knife. And what started as a routine interview quickly spiraled into television chaos. Make sure to subscribe and drop a comment because this story gets absolutely wild. Nicolas Cage walked onto the Late Show set with his signature intensity, his eyes scanning the audience like a predator surveying its territory. Stephen Colbert, sitting behind his desk with that familiar smug smile, clearly thought this would be another easy interview where he could showcase his wit at the expense of his guest. He had no idea what was about to unfold. "Nicolas Cage, everybody," Colbert announced as the applause died down, his voice dripping with barely concealed condescension. "Thank you for being here, Nick. Can I call you Nick?" Cage's jaw tightened slightly as he settled into the guest chair. "You can call me Nicholas. That's my name." The first red flag. Colbert's smile faltered for just a moment before he pressed on, clearly thinking he could steamroll over this minor resistance. "Right. Well, Nicholas, let's talk about your latest film. You've made, what, 100 movies now? Do you even remember them all?" The audience chuckled, but Cage's expression hardened. "I remember every single one. Each film represents a piece of my soul, a commitment to the craft that clearly some people don't understand." Colbert leaned back, that trademark arrogant grin spreading across his face. "Oh, come on. You're telling me you put your soul into The Wicker Man? Into Ghost Rider? Those weren't exactly Citizen Kane, were they?" The temperature in the studio seemed to drop several degrees. Cage's hands gripped the armrests of his chair, his knuckles whitening. Those films meant something to the people who made them and the people who watched them. Just because your narrow definition of art doesn't include genre films doesn't make them worthless. "I'm just saying," Colbert continued, clearly enjoying himself, "when you're doing 3 movies a year, quantity over quality seems to be the motto. It's like you'll take any role that pays the bills." That was the match that lit the fuse. Cage's eyes flashed with genuine anger as he leaned forward. "You want to talk about selling out? Let's talk about how you abandoned everything that made you interesting when you took this corporate gig. You used to have edge, Stephen. You used to challenge power instead of kissing up to it every night." The audience went silent. This wasn't the playful banter they expected. Colbert's face flushed red, his carefully constructed persona cracking. "Excuse me? I think you're confusing me with someone else. This show has integrity." "Integrity?" Cage laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You softball celebrities. You avoid real issues, and you hide behind this fake version of yourself because the real Stephen Colbert is apparently too dangerous for primetime television." Colbert's hands trembled slightly as he reached for his coffee mug, a nervous habit he thought the cameras wouldn't catch. "I think you might be having some kind of episode here, Nicholas. Maybe we should take a break." "An episode?" Cage's voice rose, his famous intensity now fully unleashed. "The only episode happening here is you realizing that not everyone is going to play along with your little comedy routine. You invited me here thinking you could make me the punchline, didn't you?" The show's producer was frantically gesturing from the wings, but Colbert was too flustered to notice. He tried to regain control, his voice taking on an patronizing tone. That only made things worse. "Look, I'm sure you're a very passionate person, but this is a comedy show. People come here to laugh, not to watch someone have a meltdown." "Meltdown?" Cage stood up from his chair, towering over the desk. "You want to see a meltdown? A meltdown is what happens when a supposed comedian loses his edge and becomes another corporate puppet dancing for network executives." The audience was completely silent now, some people visibly uncomfortable in their seats. Colbert tried to signal for a commercial break, but the damage was already done. His carefully cultivated image as the quick-witted, unflappable host was crumbling in. "Real time. You know what your problem is, Stephen?" Cage continued, his voice carrying across the silent studio. You're so busy trying to be liked by everyone that you've forgotten how to be honest about anything. At least when I make a bad movie, I'm still giving everything I have. What are you giving? Safe jokes and softball questions? Colbert's face was now completely red, sweat beading on his forehead despite the studio's air conditioning. I think, I think we need to… This isn't really… We should probably wrap this up. Oh, now you want to wrap it up? Cage's laugh was sharp and bitter. Funny how that works. When you're in control, you can mock and belittle all you want. But the second someone pushes back, suddenly it's time to end the conversation. The tension in the room was suffocating. Camera operators were looking around nervously, unsure whether to keep rolling or cut away. The audience sat frozen, witnessing something that clearly wasn't supposed to happen on live television. Colbert made one last desperate attempt to salvage the situation, his voice cracking slightly. Ladies and gentlemen, Nicolas Cage, everyone. We'll be right back. But Cage wasn't finished. No, 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 Cage said, holding up his hand to stop the commercial break. You don't get to dismiss me like that. You started this conversation, Stephen. You wanted to embarrass me on national television. So let's finish it. The producer was making frantic cutting motions, but Colbert was frozen like a deer in headlights. His usual quick wit had completely abandoned him. Nicholas, please, this is getting out of hand. Out of hand? Cage's voice boomed across the studio. What's out of hand is how you've built your entire career on punching down at people who are just trying to do their jobs. How many actors have sat in this chair while you mocked their work for cheap laughs? Colbert tried to stand up, perhaps thinking he could physically assert some control over the situation, but his legs were shaking. I don't mock anyone. This show is about celebrating people. Celebrating people? Cage scoffed. Is that what you call it when you spend 5 minutes making fun of someone's filmography before they even get a chance to speak? You had your, little jokes all prepared, didn't you? Your writers probably spent hours crafting the perfect insults. The camera caught Colbert glancing desperately at his cue cards, as if they might contain some magic words to get him out of this nightmare. We do comedy here, Nicholas. It's all in good fun. Good fun for who? Cage shot back. Good fun for you and your audience, who get to feel superior while you tear down someone else's life's work? You think because you hide behind humor, it doesn't hurt? You think it doesn't matter? Colbert's voice cracked as he tried to respond. I never meant to. I don't try to hurt anyone. But you do hurt people. Cage pressed on relentlessly. You hurt them, and then you act like they're the problem if they don't laugh along with you. That's the cruelest part, Stephen. You make people complicit in their own humiliation. The audience was completely silent now, some people actually getting up and leaving their seats. This wasn't entertainment anymore, this was a public execution. Colbert looked around desperately for help, but his staff was paralyzed by the unprecedented situation. You want to know what's really funny? Cage continued, his voice dropping to a more dangerous quiet intensity. You spent years playing a character who was supposed to be an arrogant, out-of-touch media personality. Turns out you weren't acting at all. Colbert's hands were visibly shaking now as he reached for his water glass. That's not fair. You don't know me. I know enough, Cage replied coldly. I know you hide behind this fake persona because the real you is apparently too cowardly to have an honest conversation. I know you've surrounded yourself with yes men who laugh at your jokes whether they're funny or not. And I know you've gotten so comfortable in your little bubble that you forgot some people might actually fight back. The desperation in Colbert's eyes was painful to watch. Please, can we start over? I think there's been a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding? Cage's laugh was harsh. The only misunderstanding is you thinking you could treat me like every other celebrity who comes through here. You thought I'd sit quietly while you got your laughs at my expense. Colbert tried one more time to regain some semblance of control. Look, maybe I came on a little strong with the questions, but this is how these interviews work. It's nothing personal. Nothing personal? Cage's eyes blazed. My work is personal. My career is personal. Every role I take, every choice I make as an artist, it's all personal. And you sitting there dismissing decades of my life as a joke, that's about as personal as it gets. The studio had become a pressure cooker. You could hear a pin drop as hundreds of people watched Stephen Colbert, one of television's most confident personalities, completely fall apart under pressure. His carefully constructed image was crumbling in real time. I apologize, Colbert stammered, his voice barely above a whisper. I sincerely apologize if I offended you. If you offended me, Cage repeated incredulously. There's no if about it, Stephen. You absolutely offended me. You offended every actor who's ever taken a risk, who's ever chosen passion over playing it safe. You offended everyone who believes that art doesn't have to fit into your narrow little box to have value. Colbert was sweating profusely now, his makeup starting to run under the hot studio lights. What do you want me to say? What can I do? To fix this? You can't fix it, Cage replied with finality. You can't take back years of cheap shots and lazy comedy. You can't undo the damage you've done to people who trusted you enough to come on your show. The audience was now more uncomfortable than they'd ever been in their lives. Some were openly staring at their phones, probably posting about what they were witnessing. Others looked like they wanted to run for the exits, but were too shocked to move. Please, Colbert begged, his voice cracking completely. I have a family. I have people depending on me. This show, it's my livelihood. And my films are mine, Cage shot back without an ounce of sympathy. But that didn't stop you from treating them like garbage, did it? You didn't think about my livelihood when you were getting your cheap laughs. The producer finally found his voice and started shouting from the wings. Cut to commercial. Cut to commercial now. But Colbert waved him off with a trembling hand. No, let him finish. Let him say whatever he wants to say. Cage studied Colbert's broken expression for a long moment before speaking again. You know what the saddest part is, Stephen? You actually had talent once. You were brave once. But somewhere along the way, you decided it was easier to punch down than to punch up. Easier to mock than to challenge. Easier to be safe than to be real. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Colbert's face had gone completely pale, all the fight drained out of him. But Cage wasn't done delivering his verdict. You want to know what real courage looks like? Cage continued, his voice now carrying the weight of absolute conviction. Real courage is putting yourself out there knowing people like you will tear you apart for entertainment. Real courage is choosing the difficult role, the weird movie, the path that doesn't guarantee applause. Colbert opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. His hands were gripping the edge of his desk so tightly his knuckles had turned white. The confident talk show host who'd started this interview was completely gone, replaced by a broken man who'd finally met someone who wouldn't play by his rules. I've made movies that people call disasters, Cage went on relentlessly. I've taken risks that failed spectacularly. And you know what? I'd rather fail trying to do something meaningful than succeed at being a corporate puppet who's forgotten what it means to actually stand for something. The studio audience was witnessing television history, but not the kind anyone wanted to be part of. Several more people had quietly slipped out, unable to handle the second-hand embarrassment of watching their beloved host get systematically destroyed. Colbert finally found his voice, though it came out as barely a whisper. I think maybe you should leave. Oh, now I should leave. Cage's laugh was sharp as a blade. Funny how that works, isn't it? You can dish it out all night long, but the second someone serves it back to you, suddenly they're the problem. Please, Colbert begged, his eyes actually filling with tears. This has gone too far. Has it? Cage leaned forward, his intensity filling the entire studio. Because from where I'm sitting, we're just getting started. You've had years to perfect your little routine of tearing people down. I figure I've got at least a few more minutes to return the favor." The producer was now frantically waving security toward the stage, but they seemed hesitant to interrupt what was clearly a career-defining moment, even if it was career-ending for one of the participants. "You talk about integrity," Cage continued, his voice growing more passionate with each word. "But where's your integrity when you're making fun of someone's work they poured their heart into? Where's your integrity when you're getting laughs at the expense of people who trusted you enough to be vulnerable on your show?" Colbert was openly crying now, tears streaming down his face as his carefully constructed world collapsed around him. "I never meant to hurt anyone. I swear I never meant to hurt anyone." "But you did hurt people," Cage said with devastating finality. "And the worst part is, you hurt them while smiling. You made cruelty seem charming. You turned mockery into an art form and convinced everyone, including yourself, that it was just harmless fun." The silence in the studio was deafening. Even the camera operators had stopped moving, transfixed by the complete demolition they were witnessing. This wasn't just an interview gone wrong, this was a public reckoning. "You know what your real problem is, Stephen?" Cage stood up again, looking down at the broken man behind the desk. "You've spent so long being fake that you've forgotten how to be real. You've hidden behind characters and comedy for so long that when someone finally calls you out, you don't even know how to respond as yourself." Colbert looked up at him through his tears, his voice cracking completely. "What do you want from me? What can I possibly say to make this stop?" "Nothing," Cage replied coldly. "There's nothing you can say because this isn't about words anymore. This is about consequences. This is about someone finally holding you accountable for the damage you've done with your so-called harmless comedy." The head of security finally stepped onto the stage, but he moved slowly, clearly unsure of the protocol for this unprecedented situation. "Mr. Cage, I think it's time for you to go." Cage turned to face the security guard, his expression calm but unyielding. "I'll leave when I'm finished." "You're finished now," Colbert managed to say, though his voice was still shaking. "Get him out of here. Get him off my show." "Your show?" Cage turned back to face him one last time. "This stopped being your show the moment you decided to ambush me with your prepared insults. This became my show the second I decided to fight back." Two more security guards had joined the first, forming a loose circle around Cage, but he showed no signs of being intimidated. If anything, he seemed energized by the confrontation. "You can have me removed," Cage said, his voice carrying to every corner of the silent studio. "But you can't remove what just happened here. Everyone saw who you really are when the pressure was on. Everyone saw how you crumble when someone doesn't play along with your game." Colbert was sobbing openly now, his head in his hands. "Please just go. Please just leave me alone." "I'm going," Cage said, as the security guards moved closer. "But not because you're kicking me off. I'm leaving because I've said everything I came here to say." He started walking toward the exit, the security guards flanking him but not actually touching him. At the edge of the stage, he turned back one final time. "Good luck rebuilding your reputation after this, Stephen. You're going to need it." And with that, Nicolas Cage walked off. The Late Show stage, leaving behind a broken host, a traumatized audience, and what would undoubtedly become one of the most talked-about television moments in history. The cameras kept rolling as Colbert sat alone at his desk, still crying, the weight of his exposed cowardice crushing down on him in front of millions of viewers. So there you have it, one of the most explosive confrontations ever caught on live television. What did you think of Cage's takedown of Colbert? Was he justified in fighting back against years of cheap shots? Or did he go too far? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and make sure to subscribe for more incredible stories like this one.